Welcome to the Why Doesn't My Partner podcast.
I'm Jules.
I'm Vicky.
And I'm Rebecca. We're your hosts. We're also couples therapists and messy humans bumbling through our own relationships every day.
We met through our training and practice of relational life therapy. Between us, we have more than 40 years of experience holding hard relational questions with our clients. We're going to bring those questions here.
And together, we're going to take a stab at answering those questions. This podcast is not a substitute for therapy. If something you hear in this episode stirs something deep within you about your relationship, reach out to a couples therapist in your area.
We also love to hear your questions, so don't forget to go over to whydoesmypartner.com and leave us a question of your own. Here's today's question.
Doesn't my partner want to go to therapy?
There are so
Because-
many reasons for this one.
It's awkward.
It's intimate.
It's vulnerable.
It means something's wrong.
You're being freaking controlling.
Yeah, controlling.
You're making me go. Don't make me do this. Resistant to controlling is common.
They don't see the same issue that you see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need it?
Yeah, for sure. It's expensive.
I don't want to invest in that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's nothing wrong here. We're fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, we can keep going with
I was going to say there's a
We could-
lot of reasons.
All of the
Should we
reasons.
just list the reasons and then we'll like end this episode? Like,
We
we'll just
should
give them
list
the reasons.
These are all the reasons your partner potentially does not want to go to therapy.
And
Yeah. And I really
long.
get all of that. I didn't really want to, I was super resistant to therapy. So like
Oh, that's
as a,
right.
yeah,
You
I
really were.
I was super resistant. So I was married before and in a really bad time. And I did end up going to therapy basically because I had tried literally everything else I could think of. I thought it was stupid. I got into a fight with my therapist about feelings and whether or not they were important because I thought the whole thing was dumb. And it was super awful. I mean, it totally saved my life and transformed my belief about what therapy is. And I ended up going to grad school and becoming a therapist because of this experience. And that doesn't take away that the
That's
first
hard.
like
Mhm.
3 months was like basically me dragging myself there because I hated it. I
3
hated the
months.
vulnerability of it.
3
I hated,
months.
I'm very stubborn. Yeah, I was really stuck and very stubborn. So I just kept going, but it was not a pleasant experience, not in the beginning.
Right.
And I think couples therapy, having been both an individual and couples therapist for a lot of years now, I can say couples therapy is weird feeling.
Mhm.
You've never sat there in a room and talked to a person, much less a stranger, about your problems before. So I totally get why it's a bit of a hard sell.
Mhm.
The most intimate of your problems, like the deep, get in there and find the thing that like keeps coming up over and over and over again. And that's the one we're going to get really real about.
Totally.
Yeah.
God,
That usually has to do with like money or sex or kids or like
Yeah.
cleaning or time or something
Or
really
big stuff.
important.
childhood trauma. It's
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
the stuff that we don't want to sit with because we're like conditioned to not, like, you don't sit with the stuff. You kind of
Mhm.
brush it off and you keep going.
You keep going.
Mhm.
Well, and how many people out there, I love that you said childhood trauma, Rebecca, because how many people out there, two things, either don't believe they have any, which I think would be rare, and two, even if they know that they had it, may not believe it's affecting them today, which then still gets us back to why do we need to go? Like, I don't see the
Right.
reason to go, but childhood
Right.
trauma is big.
True story here. When I was starting to do a lot of my own trauma healing work, there was this brief conversation with my mother where she was like, "Oh, we don't have any of that."
Right.
So there's these just the ways that we're held and informed about,
Mhm.
Mhm.
what is and what isn't, what does and what doesn't affect us. And not every, like the hard things that affect some of us don't necessarily affect others. And
Right.
I love Jules Bonnie Badenoch's definition of trauma, where so much of this is about the parts of the hard things that happened to you that you had support in digesting. Right?
Mhm.
What you didn't have to support to digest is the stuff that gets lodged in.
Yeah, I think about trauma. I guess I have a unusual definition of trauma in that I'm really looking at it as how memory sits and is accessed in your brain. So I'm thinking about when it comes up, does it come up in a way that's already metabolized and understood and part of your narrative flow and probably, yes, has support somewhere in that story? Or is it affecting you in ways you may not be aware of? Or is it coming up and you didn't actually know that that was what was coming up, was these old learnings that were maybe black and white or really hard?
Okay.
And here they are. Yeah.
I'm laughing because we were setting up an internet booster in the house last September, and I literally started to cry. So when you say comes up in ways you don't know, I looked at him and I said, he looked at me like I had 10 heads. And I said, I honestly don't know what this is about, because clearly there's no rational, logical reason to cry when you're plugging in an internet booster.
Totally. And that could have been hormones, but probably we'd call it adverse childhood experiences.
Yes.
So there's a lovely study for anybody who doesn't know called the ACEs study, and that stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And what they found is that the health and social outcomes for people who have a higher ACEs score is really significant. Yeah. And these are things that our culture doesn't normally classify as trauma. So like a parental divorce is actually on the list.
I can't think of other examples, right?
Food scarcity is on the list. So there's lots of things that are on the list. If you don't know it, just Google ACEs questions and you'll see the
we'll put
study.
a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
We'll make it easy.
And the higher the score, the more likely of outcomes of like obesity and substance use and heart attacks and
there's all sorts of a diverse
issues,
range of mental health and relational health and job health and physical health consequences. And it's the first really huge study that's actually putting this in tracking this in a way that's helping us understand we're not making this up. Right. That these things that are happening early in us affect the ways we see the world. And we don't have to call it trauma. Well, if your partner does not think they are traumatized, I would not use the word trauma with them.
I shouldn't be trying to convince him that he's wrong.
No.
All the time. Like all the time.
Losing strategy.
Right. No, but it could be, hey, I want to make a relationship different or better or deeper. Right. And yes, there are things in our histories that may affect how our relationship is unfolding. Yes, we might look at those. Right. That is part of therapy. I'm not going to lie to you guys. We're therapists. We do a lot of looking back. Yeah. We look back a lot.
You know what strikes me though is that we're talking about why doesn't my partner want to go to therapy? And we're not talking about what kind of therapy we're talking about here. Like, are we talking about couples therapy? Or are we talking about individual therapy? Or are we talking about family therapy? Because there's so many different forms and models of therapy and different kinds of therapists, right? Like maybe your partner doesn't want to go to therapy because they had a really shitty experience. Sorry. Maybe I shouldn't curse.
You can totally say that word.
So
I can handle it.
Well, then good. We're fine. Right. But maybe they had a pretty awful experience. Yeah. And that's why they don't want to go. And maybe they don't want to go because for them, it doesn't feel like such an issue. But now if you leverage, well, it's a really big issue for us and for me, and we're at a breaking point. If we don't do something about this, that might be different than you need to go work on you.
And I'm also thinking because even we have questions about the, like, all the things we started with, these are all the reasons why your partner might not want to go. And then I get curious as to, why do you want your partner to go? So Rebecca, similar to what you're saying, if you can meet your partner's resistance with curiosity instead of defensiveness, of like, with all due respect, rather than asking us, ask your partner, why don't you want to go to therapy? What are your concerns? What are your fears? What do you think is going to happen? Because maybe our entire answers on this podcast are off the mark.
Could totally be. And another thing I'm thinking is to get clear with yourself about if it's a request or if it's a demand. So requests are, I would like this, but I'm going to be able to tolerate my disappointment if you say no. Demands are, this is
what I
really...
did when I brought my husband into therapy. It was like, we're at a breaking point.
Oh, well, yeah.
And we either do this or this is where we need to go.
Yeah. And for some couples, doing weekly or ongoing therapy actually is not the best fit. My husband and I started going to therapy, not actually in a therapist's office. We went to Terry Real's boot camp. That's the same boot camp that the three of us host now. But my first one was with him, and I did drag him to this thing, and it was 2 days. So it was a 2-day commitment instead of an every week commitment. It was super transformative for our marriage. And he said, oh, the next time the year came around, he was actually the one who said, hey, we're going to that thing again this year, right? Because it was so helpful.
It was transformative. Yeah.
Because it was so transformative. So, and we went again and we went again. We've been many times. So this is like, I just want to highlight something that you guys are saying of like, what kind of therapy? It could be a lot of different kinds. So you could do it in like a workshop-y way, or there are a lot of therapists, Vicki and Rebecca, I know you guys both do this, and I do too, where we do intensive therapy, where it's 10 or 20 hours in a really short period of time. Or you can do the regular weekly kind for sure. And I think maybe broadening how we're looking at what therapy could be for you could create invitation. Right.
Yep.
And then I think you got to get clear with yourself. Is it a demand? And if so, how are you presenting that information? Are you doing it with consideration, with kindness, with clarity? And the other piece that was sticking out for me when I heard this question was, are you behaving congruently with your feelings? So if you're really unhappy in your relationship, are you acting happy?
Because that would send the message then that, what do you mean we're not okay?
It sends a mixed message.
It seems like we're fine, like I don't, this isn't really, I'm not digesting it. It's not getting through.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be that people go to therapy when there's something wrong. At this point, my husband and I go to workshops and intensives and things like that because we want to make our relationship better or deeper. It's not actually because something's wrong. So sometimes we might go and the ask is not about, look, we got to do this. It's more like, I'd love for us to explore this aspect of our relationship. Would you come do this workshop with me and see if we can like make things even cooler?
My husband and I keep going. Like we started going many, many years ago, and we keep going because it's this really special place for us now. Right. And it's not something we go to very often. Like we go maybe once every 2 months or something like that. Maybe it sometimes even spreads out or gets a little closer or whatever. But it's a really comfortable place where like we could really just deepen how we see each other and know each other.
You make it sound so beautiful and inviting.
Because it's gotten that way.
Right.
It wasn't always that way. Right.
It's super awkward at first, guys.
Yeah,
it really is. It's weird.
It's awkward. It's weird. It's also uncomfortable and confronting. And like, you have to reckon with parts of yourself.
Right.
And once you do, like we've cleared out a lot of stuff. You know what I keep thinking about? This is going to sound ridiculous, but I've been watching some YouTube videos lately and there's this commercial that keeps coming up. That's like, it's one of those like, YouTube block, get in your way commercials. And it's something like, do you know that the average person carries around 5 years of poop in their I'm thinking about that during this episode because I'm like, we carry around so much crap.
Totally.
Seriously.
And we need
What
to
a good
clear
analogy.
that stuff out.
We need to clear that stuff out. That is so
That's such
true.
a good analogy.
That's so true.
And
once
it's cleared out, it gets to a really beautiful place.
Totally. And the Gottmans actually, I think, did a little bit of research on this. Did you know most people go to couples therapy about 6 years after they should have?
Yeah.
So if you're thinking it might be time for you to go,
don't wait 6 years.
Don't wait 6 years.
Probably past time.
It's probably already past time if you're even having the thought. And so what are you going to do? And my thought is, well, especially if it's couples therapy, if you think your partner needs to go to therapy, that's
like
a different
individual
thing. Like individual therapy, then, you can talk to them about what you're seeing that makes you think that, but them going to individual therapy is going to be their journey.
I think also for individual therapy, a lot of people arrive there when they've hit a bottom. It might be a temporary bottom. It might be a bigger bottom. But we arrive there or we return there when we really need that kind of support. And so maybe they just haven't hit that place yet.
Yeah. But if it's couples therapy, get clear with yourself. Is this a request or is it a demand? And start talking about it and make sure your behavior is congruent with how you're actually feeling.
And do a check and see if you're trying to control something.
Yeah.
But don't act happy if you're not. That's what Jules means by congruency.
Yeah. 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 So I think that wraps up today's episode.
Yep. Be well, guys.
Bye-bye.
That wraps up season 1 of the Why Does My Partner podcast. We'll be working behind the scenes on season 2 and enjoying some time off with our loves.
Expect season 2 in mid-September 2021. In the meantime, do continue sending us your questions for future episodes.
We have 2 new bootcamp offerings on the schedule, one in November of 2021 and one in February of 2022. Find more information and register to join us at whydoesmypartner.com. And while you're there, join our mailing list to be in the know when season 2 drops and all things Why Does My Partner.
That wraps up.
Yeah, just breathe for a minute.
You're fun.
Love you so much.
Have a great summer. You have to try to get.
It sounds so corny.
It does.